Hello and welcome to Miniature Adventures. I'm Big Lee and it's time for another update from the Operations Room. So this week I'm going to be looking back at what I got up to in October, and it's going to be a fairly short video because actually I didn't get a lot done. Basically I had a ton of things demanding my time, and I really need to crack the whip on myself and get on with my to-do list. So we're going to start off with a hobby update, and the month started off really well for me. We finished the third part of the Solferino game that Jonathan Freitag's been running for the Rejects, and my side, the Austrians, managed to win despite all the moaning of the opposition about how good our dice rolls were. I've written a blog post to describe the game, and Jonathan's done a series of really well researched and a lot less biased posts on his blog, and I'll try and remember to put some links down in the show notes underneath. I mean, I was actually quite tired by the end of the third session because it was like 3 really intense games, one each Monday after another, in the evening after a full day's work. Plus we were fitting in the Austrian side certainly, and I know the French players were doing the same, fitting in some lots of communications between our sides, players, and then an actual Zoom chat session where we were discussing tactics and stuff. So there was actually quite a large time commitment over the course of 3 weeks. I mean, don't be wrong, I thoroughly enjoyed it. You know, it was a brilliant experience. But maybe if we do this again, and I do hope we do, because Jonathan puts on some brilliant games, I'm hoping that we can perhaps get it down to maybe 2 weeks. I burned through a lot of brownie points with the wife that week, and I know some of the other players have said exactly the same thing. So really good, thoroughly enjoyable, a highlight of the year definitely, particularly as my side managed to squeeze a win towards the end. But maybe next time we'll tone it down a little bit and try and get it done in 2 days. Particularly as I've been, as I've said many times before, increasingly busy over the last few weeks, few months for that matter, with my day job. And then the June, October, the rest of October, my workload just went off the scale in lots of different ways. So I've been really struggling for time. One of the things that I've actually been soaking up a bit of time, and and I'm not complaining about this, is I've actually been trying to help my daughter with some history projects. It's nice to be helpful. I mean, if she came to me with her maths homework, I wouldn't have a clue. But when we're doing a bit of history, getting to talk history together, nerding out together over the history of it, and it's been quite an enjoyable, worthwhile experience, and I'm hoping it's helped her a little bit as well. And of course, that's taken up a lot of evenings between that and other things, so I definitely need to get my schedule into gear for November. So now we're on to a channel update, and again, there's not a lot really to say here other than I had some really excellent conversations through the comments with subscribers, both on the channel here and over on my blog. This one-to-one engagement is what I most enjoy about doing YouTube videos and blogging for that matter. I'm always happy to receive questions from subscribers that I might be able to turn into my Sunday conversation videos. So please, keep them coming, and please keep joining in on the conversations following some of these videos, because it's been really interesting. I mean, I have to say that from a selfish perspective, getting questions from subscribers is really useful to me, because thinking up a subject every week sounds easy, but sometimes I spend longer trying to think of a really good subject for my Sunday video, and it takes me longer to think up than it does to actually write the script. So any good question asking me my opinion or how I do something can then spur on an entire script and then broaden that conversation out to other people, and they get to contribute, and that's been a really enjoyable and a very satisfying offshoot from doing the YouTube videos. From the beginning, when I started doing this way back at the beginning of COVID and lockdowns, the whole point of it was to sort of keep us all encouraged and engaged, and it's just grown from there. And I keep making new friends through the channel and through the comments, and having some brilliant conversations. So it's been a thoroughly enjoyable experience. And this month, as I say, October, I've had some really good conversations, challenging sometimes, but very, very interesting. So now we're on to a Workbench Report. So I've started preparing miniatures for the Analog Hobbies Painting Challenge, which will start towards the end of December. And when I say preparing, I mean like cleaning the miniatures up, cleaning the flash off and cutting off any excess metal, giving them a wash. I always wash them in some soapy water, and then of course they need to be dried, and then I'll prime them. And in the process of starting this preparation on some of the figures, I've actually found some figures from earlier challenges that didn't quite get finished. They're all part painted, so I decided to get them finished now, because I can't obviously enter them in the next painting challenge. That would be cheating, of course. But I thought, you know, I'd done a load of work on them, and obviously I can't remember doing this, but I must have at the time just thought to myself, right, I've had enough of painting. I've had 3 months intensive painting, and I put them aside and then forgot all about them. So you know, it's been a bit of a boon, I suppose. You know, I found a load of figures that were part painted, and I managed to get them finished. And what I've actually ended up with is some, I don't know if you can see them here, some charioteers and some light cavalry from the Gallic forces. I've got some warrior units that can serve with the Carthaginians, but I've also got the core there of some units that can be used in an army in their own right. So I have done some Roman versus Gauls, for instance, and these are just adding a few extra figures to that Gaul army so that I can Gaulish, Celtic, whatever army. Like I say, chariots, a few bits of cavalry, some leaders, and some senior leaders on slightly larger bases. Nothing fancy really in terms of painting, just good to get them done. And the only thing I need to do now is I need to add some labels on the back of the bases, but I've run out of ink on my printer at the moment, so I'll have to get done in a day or two when the inks arrive in the post. So while doing these, I've also been experimenting with a different priming method for my 6mm figures. Now, in previous years I've tended to use a brown primer. Not everyone's choice, but it worked really well, for instance, when I did my Zulu collection. It just seemed to be just the right colour. And the benefit is that, you know, when you're painting block painting areas, if you miss any, the base coat is a dark colour, so it just looks like a shadow. And the prime is still light enough to allow you to see the details easily. So I've found that brown works really well for doing my 6mm figures. But this year I may, and I'm still experimenting with this, try a slightly different method, inspired by some videos about slap chop. Now, I'm going to talk more about this on Sunday, so for the time being I'll just say I've been exploring this method. It's just a different way of priming. It's primarily aimed at people using contrast paints, but I'm seeing if I can use it on my 6mm figures. So I'm having a little experiment, done some test figures to try and paint up, just to see how the different priming methods, do they really make a difference to the overall figure. And I'm going to, you know, paint as usual. I won't necessarily be using contrast paints on a 6mm figure, but I'm just going to do some experiments just to try them out so that I can see if it's worth me changing the way I prime my figures for this year's painting challenge. So essentially what I'll be doing is I'll be doing a black undercoat and then adding some raised highlights by just dry brushing it with some white, and then all the block colours go over the top. So it's still a primer in that black and white coat will be entirely covered by other colours by the end of the model's finished. But I'm going to have a try, have a little experiment with it to see if I can get it to work. So as I say, I'm still experimenting with this, so just watch this space, and of course watch my video on Sunday where I'll talk a little bit more about slap chop and how controversial it appears to be. Now, for this month's book review, I've been on a bit of a nostalgia trip, to be honest. I decided to reread a book just for relaxation rather than research, so I've gone for Cornelius Ryan's A Bridge Too Far. The book itself has dated a little bit over the years, but there's no denying the quality of the prose, I think. Some of the facts haven't aged well, and there are better research books that benefit from the perspective of nearly 5 decades of new material since this book was first published in the mid-70s. But from a storytelling perspective, it's a cracking read. And the reason, I think, is that Ryan was a war correspondent for the Daily Telegraph. He flew alongside American aircrew on 14 bomber missions, and he was then attached to General Patton's Third Army, so he had first-hand experience of both airborne and land operations, and more importantly the men that carried them out. So he's got a very humanistic approach when he's describing these soldiers' experience. So for all his faults as a historian, and he does have a few, his ability to describe the experience of the average soldier for me is undeniable and gives this book a really unique energy, and one I really enjoyed it. And the added advantage is my copy of the book has the added bonus of having the signatures of two men who fought at Arnhem, and I was lucky enough to meet at a signing event some time ago. Both of them served in the 101st Air Landing Field Ambulance, so they were absolutely in the thick of it. Lovely gentlemen, so both sadly passed on since they signed this, so I do treasure this particular book. So that's it for this month. I'm trying to be a little bit better organised and more self-disciplined, but as you know, stuff happens. So if you enjoyed today's video, please join the conversation in the comments below, and of course like, subscribe and share, and if you want to keep up to date with videos as I put them out, please tap the bell notification icon. So until next time, look after yourself, getting as much gaming as you can, and of course keep rolling high.